Hi, welcome once again to our YouTube channel. Thanks for subscribing to our channel. We really appreciate you. Alright, today we want to quickly take a rundown of the Waec 2024 Biology Practical Specimen. That is what we want to talk about today. We'll be looking at all of the specimens and we'll quickly talk about some characteristics, uses, and whatever we can think about looking at each of the specimens. So we'll be starting by listing all of the specimens right now. So we're starting with specimen A. The specimens that Waec has released for this year's biology practical. Specimen A. Specimen A. We have the specimen A to be gill of the fish. Gill of fish. That is what Waec has given us for specimen A. And then we have B. B to be whole liver of domestic fowl. Whole liver of domestic fowl. With the gallbladder. With gallbladder. And then we have our C. Our C happens to be lungs of domestic fowl. And then our specimen D. Specimen D there is the whole gizzard from the fowl. Specimen D, gizzard of domestic fowl. And then we have E. Specimen E there is intestine of domestic fowl. Intestine of the domestic fowl. And then we have our F. F is the ginger rhizome. Ginger rhizome. And then we have G. Specimen G there is the onion bulb. Onion bulb. And we have our H. Our H happens to be the leaf of Bryophyllum. Leaf of Bryophyllum. And then we have our J to be cassava stem. Cassava stem. While our K, our specimen K, is cassava tuber. And then we have specimen L. Specimen L as given is the thoracic vertebrae. Thoracic vertebra. And then we have specimen M to be the humerus bone. Humerus bone. We have specimen N. Specimen N happens to be mango seed. Mango seed. We have specimen P to be femur bone. Femur bone. We have specimen Q to be lumbar vertebra. The lumbar vertebra. And we have specimen R, which is the last specimen there to be orange seed. Orange seed. So these are the list of specimen that has been released by Waec for this year's biology practical. We have specimen A to be gill of fish. Specimen B is the whole liver of domestic fowl. We have specimen, the whole liver of domestic fowl with the gallbladder. Specimen C is the lungs of the domestic fowl. Specimen D is the gizzard of the domestic fowl. We have specimen E to be intestine of the domestic fowl. We have specimen F to be ginger rhizome. Specimen G is onion bulb. Specimen H is leaf of Bryophyllum. Specimen J is cassava stem. Specimen K is cassava tuber. Specimen L is thoracic vertebrae. Specimen M is humerus bone. We have the specimen N to be mango seed. Specimen P to be femur bone. Specimen Q is the lumbar vertebrae, while specimen R, which is the last specimen there, happens to be the orange seeds. So we'll be picking all of these specimens one after the other. We'll be talking about them with probable questions that we'll be coming across in our practical examination. So without wasting much of our time, let us dive straight into it. So we'll move straight to talking about the specimen A. Specimen A. Specimen A, which happens to be the gill of a fish. Gill of fish. That is what our specimen A happens to be. So that is where we are picking it up from. So what do we have to say about specimen A? The gill of the fish. Now, when we look at the gill of a fish, it is a respiratory organ that is possessed by many aquatic animals. Let me put that here. It is a respiratory organ possessed by many aquatic animals. So what do they use this for? What do they use these gills for? They actually possess them for extraction of dissolved oxygen, basically for the exchange of gas. That is basically what they make use of the gills for exchange of gas. So they use them for the extraction. Gills help in the exchange of gas. That is, for the extraction of dissolved oxygen. The extraction of dissolved oxygen from water or in the water, as well as replacing it with carbon dioxide, and the elimination of carbon dioxide. Yes, the fishes are also animals, so they breathe in oxygen and they take out carbon dioxide. But the kind of oxygen that they breathe in is called the dissolved oxygen because it is found dissolved in water. So the oxygen that we have in water, which is part of the constituent of water, water is made of H2O. So the oxygen in the water is what we refer to as the dissolved oxygen. So it is from this oxygen that the fishes actually get their own oxygen, which is used for their respiration. So the gill is the major organ that is responsible for carrying out this extraction of the dissolved oxygen, making it possible for these organisms to actually survive. The gill system is the gill, also called lamella. Let me put that this way. The gill is also called lamella. We also call it lamella. That's another name. So perhaps you see it in any textbook. We're still talking about the gill. So if you look at it, apart from its function of eliminating carbon dioxide after it has taken in oxygen or dissolved oxygen from water, it is also responsible for the transfer of ions and water. It is also responsible for the transfer of ions. So that is another function of the gill system. The gills of some organisms, because it is not all aquatic animals that have gills, but for some of them, they even have the ability to stay out of water for some time, where they actually bask in the sun, for example. Now, when the aquatic animal is not in water, how then does it survive? How then does it breathe? And that is what makes me talk about this. The gill system of some organisms. Example, we have the hermit crab. Okay, let me put it this way. The gill of some organisms, we are still talking about aquatic organisms, permits them, okay, let me just give example, e.g. the hermit crab has been adapted to the ability to survive outside water. Have been adapted to the ability to survive out of water. If they are going to be out of water and they still have to carry out respiration, it means their body must be moist so as to continue what we refer to as respiration. Particularly on land, where their skin must remain moist. It is very important. So that is one of the functions of the gill. Now, if you look at the gill system, it is covered by something called the gill cover. The gill is covered by a cover. We call it the operculum. That is what we call it. The operculum is the gill cover that helps to protect the gills in the body of the animal, and it is found on both sides of the pharynx. Found on both sides. Found on both sides of the pharynx. The pharynx happens to be the throat of the organism. So basically, these are the things that we need to look at talking about the gill. Okay, let me quickly add a few more things. Fishes now, we already said that the fishes, they absorb dissolved oxygen. They extract dissolved oxygen from water. So how do they do it? The fishes draw or absorb oxygen rich water into the body, into their body through the mouth. They take in the water through the mouth into the body, okay, into the left part of the body. Into the left part, thereby pumping all the water, pumping the water over the gills, and then the oxygen enters into the bloodstream so as to pass the oxygen into the bloodstream. Now, when this is done, we have the bloodstream now giving oxygen deficient water out of the body through the other side of the organism. Oxygen deficient. When we say oxygen deficient, what we are talking about is water rich in carbon dioxide, water infused with carbon dioxide. Remember that they have taken all the oxygen from the water, so they have replaced it with carbon dioxide this time around, and so this is exited. It allows oxygen deficient or water infused with carbon dioxide to be sent out of the body through the gill slit. Through the gill slits. These gill slits are found on the right. So that is how respiration is done in the gill, or using the gill of the fishes. That is how the fishes actually carry out respiration in their body parts. So if we want to look at some organs in this particular system, we'll be looking at this. So this is an example of what the gill looks like. You can see the gill here. You can see the gill arc. This place here is referred to as the gill arc, and then we have all of these filaments. So that is what the gill looks like. Let me show us other examples, other pictures. We can see it now. We can see the gill arc here. This part here is called the gill arc. Then all of these parts here, we have them as the rachis, where we have this place here to be the filaments. So that is the diagram. We still have other pictures that you can see. You can see this is what the, let me enlarge it. You can see it. So we have the arc here. The arc is seen here, and then close to the arc is where we have the rachis, and here we have all the filaments. We still have other pictures that we can look at. This is another diagram. Perhaps you are asked to draw. So we can see all of these parts that extrudes outward here. All of these parts here make up the filament, and then this place here is we call this place the gill arc, while this place here they are the rachis. So that is what we talk about looking at what this is. That is the gill of the fishes. So let me quickly explain what I said in our notes. The water goes into the mouth of the fish through this part here, and then it enters into the gill system. So we have the gill system here. So the oxygen rich water enters into the body of the organism, and then the gills will absorb all of the oxygen. Look at this here now. Oxygen rich blood enters into the body, and then when the oxygen is being depleted, then it sends it out of the body through this other part here, where the body is taking out, or the gill system is taking out the oxygen through the right part. Now it enters into the left, and then it goes out through the right part of the body. So we can see the blood here. The blood is at this point here 100%, 80%, 60, 35, and by the time it has been totally depleted, it goes out again through this part here. So that is the system of flow of respiration in the aquatic animal. So that is that about the gill of the fish. Let us move to the next specimen, which happens to be specimen B. Specimen B. And specimen B there is talking about the liver of domestic fowl with gallbladder. Liver of domestic fowl with gallbladder. That is what specimen B has for us. So what is this? What are we talking about? A domestic fowl is the normal fowls of poultry birds that we have in our houses. So the scientific name, the scientific name of that animal, the scientific name, we have it to be the Gallus domesticus. Gallus domesticus. That is the scientific name of that animal, Gallus domesticus. Now, it has its classification when we talk about the taxonomy. If you look at the taxonomy, let me quickly put that here. We have the kingdom to be Animalia. We have the phylum to be Chordata. We have the class. The class, we have it to be the aves. We have the order to be the clariforms. Or the clariformes. We have the family now. We have the family to be the Phascidae. Phascidae. We have the genus, like we have said earlier on, the Gallus, and the species is also Gallus domesticus. So that is what the taxonomy of this organism looks like. So we're actually talking about the liver. The liver of this organism here is similar to those of the liver of other vertebrates. So we'll be looking at all of the liver together as we talk about this. So the liver is a major organ that is found in the body, and it is the synthesis and metabolism of body fat. The liver breaks down, balances, and creates nutrients from blood that passes through it. So those are some of the functions of the liver. The liver is the largest organ. In the body. It helps in the synthesis. It helps in the synthesis and metabolism. It helps in the synthesis and metabolism of fat. Primarily, that is its function. So the liver also breaks down balances, and creates nutrients from the blood. Creates nutrients from the blood that passes through it. From the blood that passes through it. So the liver is responsible for carrying out the elimination or the synthesis and the metabolism of fat. Fat that is gotten from food that we have taken into the body. The liver is a bilobed organ. The liver, let me put that here. The liver is a bilobed. Bilobed there meaning it has two lobes. Bilobed there meaning it has two lobes. A bilobed organ that lies ventrally. In the abdomen. It lies ventrally in the abdomen, and it is closely associated with the proventriculus in the animal. Closely associated with the proventriculus. The proventriculus and the spleen in the birds. So that is one of the functions, or those are some of the functions of the liver. So like I said, it helps to emulsify fat. Okay, primarily it is responsible for the production of the bile which emulsifies fat. That is why we say it helps to emulsify fat. So if we look at it, the specimen actually is talking about liver of domestic fowl with the gallbladder. So we have to bring in the gallbladder at this point. The right side of the lobe is usually larger than the left side of the lobe, and it is involved in the secretion of bile. Yes, that is another function. Let me put that here. The liver secretes bile stored in the gallbladder. Stored in the gallbladder. So that is what the liver does. So let us bring the gallbladder into this now. The gallbladder is a small pear-shaped organ that stores and releases bile. Gallbladder is a small pear-shaped organ that stores and at the same time releases bile which happens to be a digestive fluid or enzyme. A digestive fluid. So that is what the gallbladder does. It houses the bile that is produced by the liver. So that is the relationship between the gallbladder and the liver. That is produced by the liver. So we understand the relationship between them now. So the gallbladder is also called, we also call the gallbladder, we call it the cholecyst. Gallbladder, also called cholecyst, houses the bile which is greenish yellow in color. It is greenish yellow in color, and its major function is to emulsify fat, which emulsifies fat. So it breaks down fat. That is what the emulsification there says. Let me put it this way, which emulsifies break down fats. So that is what the liver of the fowl and the gallbladder, that is what they do. The liver is responsible, we said it is the largest organ, so it is responsible for producing the liver bile. It produces bile, and then the bile is stored in the gallbladder, and we have talked about the shape of these two. So let us quickly see these organs. This is the liver here. We have the liver here. This part here is what we refer to as the liver, this part here. So these are lobes of the liver, and then this part that we are seeing in the middle here where the pointer is blinking is what we refer to as the gallbladder. If you look closely into it, you discover that inside the gallbladder we have something that looks like green. You can see it looks like green inside the gallbladder. So that thing is called, it's greenish yellow. It is called the bile. It is inside the gallbladder that we have the bile. So that is basically what the liver and the gallbladder looks like. So we can see it here as well. We can see this is the gallbladder here, and this is the liver around it. You can see the gallbladder possessing like greenish yellow color, and then the liver surrounds it. So basically that is what the gallbladder and the liver looks like. You can see it here as well. The liver surrounded or surrounding the gallbladder. So we can see it as well here. This is the gallbladder here. At this point here is where we have the gallbladder, and then we have the lobes of the liver surrounding it. The lobes here, they are not actually four. It's just because they have been split open. So that is what the gallbladder and the liver looks like. So let us look at the next specimen now. And the next specimen is talking about specimen C. Specimen C, which happens to be the lungs of the domestic fowl. So we will not be wasting much of our time to talk about the taxonomy any longer, since we have discussed that we are talking about specimen B. So this time around we are talking about lungs of the domestic fowl. Lungs of the domestic fowl. That is what we have before us now. So the lung, like we have said, is or like we know, is a respiratory organ that is found in animals. This time around, the animal was specific to talk about is the domestic fowl. So the lungs make up the large part of the respiratory system. Let me put that here. The lungs make up the large part. It makes up the large part of the respiratory system. Of the respiratory system. Now it allows breathing. System that aids or allows breathing. Yes, that is the function of the lungs. The domestic fowl has two symmetrical lungs. The domestic fowl has two symmetrical lungs, and they are connected to the trachea. Which are connected to the trachea. The trachea is also called the windpipe. So they are connected to the trachea. That is part of what the lungs talks about. It is actually responsible for the active exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. It is actively responsible for the exchange of gases, like we talked about the fishes, the gills in the fishes some time ago. So this time around, the similar thing that the gills do is what these lungs also do, but this time around they do them in the domestic fowls. So they are responsible for exchange of gases. That is, we have oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen and carbon dioxide. The lungs of the domestic fowl is different from those of other vertebrates. The lungs of the domestic fowl is different from those of other vertebrates. There's a reason for that. It's different from those of other vertebrates. Why? Because the aves breathe by continuously moving the ribs. Because the aves, or let me say the fowls, they breathe by continuously moving the rib and the breastbone. By continuously moving the ribs and the breastbone, which is also called the sternum. You can also call it the sternum. That's the other name, the name for the breastbone, which is also called the sternum. And this brings about respiration for them. The reason for this is because the domestic fowls lack what we refer to as the diaphragm, which is as a result of the absence of diaphragm in the birds or in the domestic fowls. So basically that is the reason why we have domestic fowls breathing slightly different from the other animals. And this thereby causes a retention in constant air volume. This results to a retention. They actually retain some amount of oxygen in their lungs. Retention in a constant air volume. So they do not possess the domestic fowls, they do not possess the diaphragm. It is with the diaphragm that other vertebrates are able to carry out continuous contraction and relaxation of the lungs. But for the domestic fowls, they do not possess the diaphragm. Hence, they make use of their ribs as well as the breastbone or the sternum to carry out continuous contraction and relaxation. And this brings about movement of the air into and out of the lungs. And that is how they carry out respiration in these organisms. Let us see example of such. So here we have what the lungs look like. If you look closely here, this is where the lungs, we have it. You can see we said earlier on that the lung is too symmetrical. It has the symmetry of the lungs in the domestic animal or the domestic fowl is 2. So this is one here and this is another here. So they are responsible for carrying out exchange of gases through the trachea. So the trachea brings in oxygen into the lungs and then it expels carbon dioxide. So basically that is what the trachea does. We can see it here as well. We can see the lung here. You can see where the lung is. We can see the lung here now. So you can see it. This is where the lung lies and this is the other one. So they permit exchange of gas through the trachea. The trachea brings in oxygen and then it expels carbon dioxide. So basically that is what that part of the system is talking about. So we move to the next specimen. The next specimen, which is specimen D. Specimen D. And our specimen D is gizzard. Gizzard of the domestic fowl. Gizzard of the domestic fowl. You can see it also being called the ventriculus. The gizzard is also called the ventriculus. Now, what is this gizzard? A gizzard is a muscular, thick-walled part of the bird's stomach or the alimentary canal. It is a muscular, thick-walled, because it has very, very thick membrane, thick-walled part of the birds, permit me to use bird for the fowl here, the bird's stomach or alimentary canal, which is used for grinding food, used for grinding food samples, particularly when the birds have taken in some grains, which is their major food. And this is done as a result of it possessing what we refer to as grit. Typically, with grits. These grits, I said, they are sand-like particles. Sand-like particles. They are sand-like particles that the fowls have ingested. Ingested by the fowls. So these sand-like particles, they carry out the grinding of the food. So they accompany the action of the gizzard. These grits, they accompany the actions of the gizzard. Those are some of the functions of that part. Now, if we look at the gizzard on its own, it is, if you look at the nutritional value, we have talked about its function in the animal. Its function is basically to grind. It helps to mill the food that they feed on. The grains that they have eaten is being milled in the gizzard, along with the grit that is found inside. The grits are sand-like particles that are found inside the gizzard, so it is what makes the grinding possible. But if you now look at the nutritional value of this gizzard, nutritionally, they are highly proteinous. Gizzards are highly proteinous, containing vitamins, such as the vitamin B12, which is the cyanocobalamin, which aids the brain health or the mental health. It is also very rich in, we have it rich in zinc, iron, as well as phosphorus. So it is rich in all of these, all of which are essential. They are all essential to the body, and they do not have fats. They are very low in fat and cholesterol content. So that is basically what the gizzard is about. So this is an example of the gizzard. We can see what it looks like. So this is the thick wall. We can see the thick wall of the gizzard. Let me show us what inside of it looks like. We can see it here. It has some particles that looks like stones. So this is the gizzard itself. So we can see stones inside it. So it is with these stones, these are what I refer to as grits. So it is with these that it is able to grind what it has to grind. That is the grains that the domestic fowls have consumed. So that is that about the specimen D. So specimen E now. Specimen E. We have specimen E to be the intestine. Intestine of domestic fowl. The intestine of domestic fowl is what we want to talk about now. So let's see how it goes. So it could also be called the gastrointestinal tract. Also called gastrointestinal. Gastrointestinal tract. So you see them calling it the GIT. So what is its function? What is its function? When we look at the intestine, we usually see it as the small intestine in the domestic fowl. So the small intestine begins at the exit from the gizzard. The small intestine begins at the exit of the gizzard. Yes, that is where we have it, and it ends at the junction of the small intestine, and ends at the junction with the ceca and the colon. That is where it ends. That is where it terminates. The ceca and the colon. Relatively, it is long with constant diameter. The intestine is relatively long with constant or regular diameter. Constant or regular diameter. And it comprises of the duodenum, it comprises of the duodenum, we have the jejunum, as well as the ileum. Those are the three parts that we have in the intestine. The duodenum, which is the entrance into the small intestine. We have the duodenum, we have the jejunum, as well as the ileum. The duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Those are the parts in the small intestine. Only the duodenum has distinguished parts, which is clearly visible. Only the duodenum has a clear part which is clearly visible. So when we look at the intestine, that is basically what we will be seeing. So the intestine is actually the part of the domestic fowl that helps in the digestion of food. It is the part of alimentary canal in the domestic fowls. So it is also called the gastrointestinal tract. Now, this is what we are talking about. You can see it here. You can see the small intestine. So this part here, from this place here like this, starting from, you can see this is where we have the gizzard. This is the gizzard here, or the ventriculus. So starting from this place here, we have the coil part here going like this. We have it going like this. It goes like this, and then it goes like this, like this. All of this part that I'm showing us make up the small intestine until it gets to this place here where it branches. You can see the ceca and the colon. So that is where we have the small intestine ending. So basically that is what we refer to as the intestine. You can see it. So all of these parts here now, from this place here where the gizzard terminates is where this intestine starts from. You can see, so this part here is the duodenum. This part here is the duodenum, and then it links into all of these parts here where we have the jejunum and the duodenum is actually very clear to identify, apart from the jejunum and the ileum. So from this place here where we said the ileum, the duodenum started, down to this place here where it branches to join the large intestine is what we refer to as the small intestine. So that is about that. So let's see another picture. This is another picture. We can see this is the duodenum here. So the small intestine starts like this. You can see it. This is the gizzard. So the small intestine starts from this place here. This is where the duodenum is, and then it moves like this and like this and like this before it gets to this place here where it links into the ceca and the colon, which is also the large intestine. So those are the parts of the alimentary canal of the domestic fowl, or the intestine of the domestic fowl. We can also see it here as well. So that is that about all of those. So perhaps you are told to draw and label. We can see the esophagus here. We can see where the crop is, and then the gallbladder, which is close to the liver, and all of the body parts that is seen. So that is what we want to talk about for those. So our next specimen now is going to be the specimen. We have the next specimen to be specimen F. Specimen F. And specimen F is the ginger rhizome. Ginger has its own botanical name, which is called the Zingiber officinale. That is its botanical name, Zingiber officinale. So what is this ginger? What is ginger? Ginger is a rhizome, like the name has informed us. It is a flowering herbaceous plant. A flowering herbaceous plant whose rhizome that is the ginger root is widely used as a spice. Yes, the ginger is a rhizome. It is an herbaceous flower that is usually used as spice, as well as its medicinal values. Spice and as medicine. It is a perennial crop which produces annual pseudopodium. It is a perennial crop, telling us that it lives more than it carries out its life cycle in more than 2 planting seasons. So it is a perennial crop or plant a perennial plant which produces annual pseudostems. It produces annual pseudostems. When we talk about pseudostems, we are talking about false stems. False stems. That is what the pseudostem mean. So, and they are made of rolled bases of leaves. Pseudostems made of rolled bases of leaves about 1 meter tall. Yes, that is about the length or the tallness of this particular tree. This particular plant bears narrow leaf blades. So if you decide to talk, so that is about ginger. If you decide to look at its taxonomy, its classification, we have it looking like this. We have the kingdom Plantae, the phylum there, we have it to be the Trachyphyta. It is a trachyphyte. We have a class to be Liliopsida. Liliopsida. The order is the Zingibellum. We have the order to be Zingiberales. We have the family. The family is the Zingiberaceae. We have the genus. The genus there is the Zingiber, and the species happens to be the Officinale. So that is the classification or the taxonomy of the ginger, which is a rhizome, that we have been given as our specimen F. So let's see what a rhizome look like. This is a typical example of rhizome, ginger particularly. This is a ginger root, and this is how the plant looks. We can see the plant, it has leafy stem. That is why we call it a pseudostem. It is leafy because it flakes off. This part peels off, and then the next part peels off, and it peels off gradually like that. So it is not an actual stem. So we have this part here buried under the ground, where this part extrudes out of the soil. So it has its own adventitious roots. You can see all of the roots there, and then the root nodules. So that is what the ginger looks like. This is another example. This is what the plant looks like when it is being harvested. There is a plant that looks so much like the ginger. It is called the turmeric plant, and this is how it looks. This is turmeric. You can see that it looks so much like the ginger, so but it is not ginger. Inside of it is more of orange to red color, and the back of it is like brown compared to, or reddish brown compared to that of ginger. This is what the plant of turmeric looks like. So it also looks like ginger, but it is not ginger. So this is ginger here, and this is ginger here. So the full plant root, the rhizome looks like this. So that is about the ginger. So we move to the next specimen, which is specimen G. Specimen G now. Specimen G. Specimen G is onion bulb. Onion bulb. It has its own scientific name. Its scientific name is Allium cepa. Allium cepa. That is its own scientific name. So what is Allium cepa? What is this onion that we're talking about? That is what we want to look at right now. So let me start with talking about its classification. Classifying it, its kingdom is Plantae. Then the phylum, we have it also to be a tracheophyte. So it is Tracheophyta. We have the class to be the Liliopsida as well. Ginger not too long ago, and we said the ginger class is also Liliopsida. And then we have the order now. The order for the Allium cepa is the Asparagales. Asparagales. Then we have the family. The family is Aliaceae. Then the genus is where we have the Allium. And then the species, we have it to be cepa. So that is about the classification or the taxonomy of the onion bulb. Now, the onion bulb is a rich vegetable that grows on the ground in onion bulb is a rich vegetable that grows on the ground. It has many vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. It contains many vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. These antioxidants they help to eliminate free radicals. Eliminators of free radicals. Free radicals that are dangerous to our health. So these antioxidants help us to eliminate them. Antioxidants in the onion bulb. So it helps to eliminate them, and so they are very, very medicinal. Also, onion have low calories. It is not energy giving, it has low calories. And then he said that onion is a vegetable when it is bulb, but it can be seen as spice, particularly when it is dried and in powdered form. Onion has two types. The first one, we have the white onion, and the second one, we have the let's say purple brown onion. So those are the types that we have. I said some minutes ago, I said that it can be seen. Let me put that here. Onion is a vegetable, like I said earlier on. But can be referred to as a spice, particularly when it is being dried. Particularly when dried and powdered, when it has been grounded, so it can be seen as a spice. So that's that about onion. So it is a bulb, and we see what it looks like. This is an example of the onion. You can see it. So this is the purple brown type that I'm talking about, and then we have the orange type, the white type as well. So this is what onion looks like, and we can see, if we are told to draw a cross section of it, if you are told to draw a longitudinal cut or a longitudinal section of the onion, this is what you are expected to draw, showing the foliar stem, the tonic, the bulb scale. Like we have all of this in here, all of these parts here that we are having that looks like this, they make up the bulb scale. Those are the fleshy modified leaves. And then we have this part here called the modified compact stem. This part here, all of these stems here, they are compact at this junction here, and that is where we have the adventitious root. So that is basically what the onion looks like. We can see how it grows here. This is the growth of the onion. The seed is planted, and then germination takes place, and then it sprouts, giving a leaf, and then the leaf will sprout with multiple leaf stems or stalks, having the root under the soil. The root remains in the soil, and then the root starts to what, the bulb aspect of it, or the bulb of it, starts to mature in the soil, and gradually we see it looking like this before it is very seen as the ripe onion. So basically that is what the onion is. So we then move to the next specimen. The next specimen we have is specimen H. Specimen H. And specimen H is the Bryophyllum, leaf of Bryophyllum. The leaf of Bryophyllum. Now the Bryophyllum has its own botanical name as well. We call it the Bryophyllum pinnatum. The Bryophyllum pinnatum. That is the scientific name of the Bryophyllum, Bryophyllum pinnatum. So let us quickly start with its own classification as well, the taxonomy. The kingdom, we have it also to be Plantae. It is a Plantae. The phylum, we have it to be, we have the phylum to be Spermatophyta. And then the class there, we have it to be Angiosperma. We have the order. The order seen there is the that's the order there, the Saxifragiles. And then we have the family. The family is Crassulaceae. We have the genus to be the Bryophyllum. And the species is we have a species to be the pinnatum. So that is about the leaf Bryophyllum. So what is it? What do we mean by the Bryophyllum species? The Bryophyllum species, also known as the air plant, also known as the air plant, or in some places called the cathedral bell or the cathedral bell, as well as it being called the miracle leaf, is because of its numerous beneficial effects, particularly in the medical field. It is a succulent plant. It is a succulent plant. It is a succulent plant, and we see it called Bryophyllum because of the manner or the way in which it grows. It is a succulent plant and is called its name Bryophyllum because of its growth. Because of its growth. Basically because that is, it grows using or producing roots on its leaves. It grows by producing roots on its leaves or budding So those are the systems through which this particular Bryophyllum grows. I will show us example of what I'm talking about shortly, where you see the roots being produced on the leaves or budding taking effect. So it is a medicinal plant used in the treatment of many ailments. It is a medicinal plant used in the treatment of many ailments. Ailments like fever, we have cough, headaches, etc. It is rich in steroids. Let me put that up here. It is rich in steroids, flavonoids, fatty acids. These are substances that can be found inside this particular item, etc. It is usually propagated by the stem, usually propagated using its leaves and stems. So that is what the Bryophyllum talks about. So let me show us what we are actually talking about. Example of what this Bryophyllum is. This is what Bryophyllum is. This is what we refer to as the miracle leaf or the cathedral bell, or like in some places they also call it the air plant. So this is what it looks like. So you can see examples here. Now if you look at it, you can see that the leaf is also having some buds that can be cut off. You can cut off each of these buds here to become whole plants on their own. So that is how this particular plant is being propagated. So this is another example. Let me show us other examples. We can see the leaf bud now. You can see all of these are buds, and you can see the adventitious root produced under the soil, the plant. All of these are examples of adventitious roots. You can see them. It is growing directly on the leaf. So these are buds with their own outgrowth forming their own adventitious roots that can be cut off to become whole plants on their own. So that is basically what the Bryophyllum is. You can see it. This is an example. This is a field of Bryophyllum. So those are the things that we refer to as the Bryophyllum. So we move to the next specimen, which is going to be specimen J. Specimen J which happens to be the cassava stem. So the cassava stem, let's see what we have to talk about concerning it. Now I'll be discussing this alongside talking about the cassava tuber, since it is the same plant. So let me start by giving us its the scientific name. It is called the Manihot esculenta. Manihot esculenta. Please, we need to understand that every time we write botanical name, we should underline them, and we should not join the underline. Please, it is very, very important. So looking at that now, let's start with the classification. The kingdom there is Plantae, and then we have the phylum. We have the phylum to be the Spermatophyta, and then we have the class to be the Magnoliopsida. And then we have the order. The order is the Ephobiates. That's the order. We now have the family to be the Ephobiaceae. And the genus is Manihot. While we have the species to be Esculentus or Esculenta. So those are the classifications that we have for this particular plant. So let us quickly look at the stem, what it looks like. Now, it is actually a plant that is perennial. It is a perennial plant, though it is extensively cultivated annually. Although perennial, it is cultivated annually. It is cultivated annually and extensively at that. And extensively. In the raw form, it contains cyanide. Which is toxic to ingest. except when it is prepared correctly. Now, this particular stem is what is used in propagating this particular plant. This plant is cultivated using its stem because it has some we call them nodes on the body part of the stem. So this is what I'm talking about. This is an example of a stem of the cassava plant. So we can see at these junctions here, you can see all of these are nodes on which a new plant, like you can see here, we can see that the new plant is already sprouting here. That is basically what we are talking about. If you look at it now, we can see that this particular plant is sprouting here. So it is sprouting at the node. That is what we refer to as the node of a cassava stem. So it is with this stem now that this plant is cultivated. Just insert this stem into the soil, and then with all necessary germination requirements, this particular plant will sprout, and then it continues to germinate. That is basically what the cassava stem looks like. So let me quickly look into the next specimen, which is specimen K. Specimen K, also talking about cassava. This time around, specimen K, this time around it is the cassava tuber. So like I told us earlier on, I already gave us the classification, and we already saw some of the uses of this plant. So let's move further talking about the cassava plant. It has two types. So we have two types of this particular cassava plant. If you look at this now, this is what we refer to as cassava. You can see that this one is having white stalk. When we look at it, all of the stalk of this plant they are whitish, or let me say greenish in color. That is one. And then we have this one here that looks like red, like the stalk here, they are red. You can see it. This is what I'm talking about. This particular stalk that you can see running down like this. This is another one. So they are of two types. So we need to be cautious of them. And so knowing them will aid our understanding of this. So the cassava tuber, both of them, talking about the tuber and their leaves, they are root vegetables that are rich in carbohydrates and calories. Tuber and leaves of cassava are rich in carbohydrates and calories. They are used in the production of so many they are used in producing many household food raw materials. E.g. garri. We also have the production of fufu. We have mashed cassava as well. Mashed cassava or cassava chips. All of these are some of the things that are gotten from this particular plant. You can also use it in the production of bread. You can use it to produce bread, French fries, cassava cakes, etc. So we need to understand what this is talking about. So this is an example of what we said. These are the stems. You can see the stem here. This ones here, they are the stem. You can see the stem, but this part here underneath is the root. So let me show us. This is a typical example of the root of the cassava plant. This is a root of the cassava plant. This is a root of cassava plant. So that is that about our specimen K. We move to specimen L. Specimen L. Specimen L. And specimen L happens to be thoracic vertebra. The thoracic vertebra. That is our next specimen. So what do we have to say about the thoracic vertebra? It is part of the axial skeleton. It is a part of the axial skeleton. The skeleton is broadly divided into two. We have the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. So the axial skeleton consists of the brain box and then the vertebral column. The axial skeleton consists of the brain box, which is also called the cranium, or the skull, as well as the vertebral column. Those are the parts in the axial skeleton. It is part of the axial skeleton. It is part of the axial skeleton. And then in the thoracic vertebra, it is a particular set of bone. We have this set of bone on the vertebral column. Now this thoracic vertebrae make up the second set of the vertebrae on the vertebral column. So we have this set. These are the set of 12 bones. The thoracic vertebrae, they are the set of 12 bones or vertebrae, like the name implies, or vertebrae that are found on the backbone. Found on the backbone. They are found on the backbone or on the vertebral column, and to which all of the ribs are attached. To which all of the ribs are attached. So all of the ribs that are found in the rib cage are all attached to the vertebral column. So in human, for example, it is a total of 12, like we can see here. It is a total of 12. I'm basing this discussion on the human vertebral system, or on the human vertebral column. So on the human vertebral column, the thoracic vertebrae that we have there, starting from the base of the skull, which is where we have the last cervical vertebrae. From there is where we have the beginning of the thoracic region, where we have the T1, T2 till it gets to the T12. So, like I said, to which the ribs are attached, ranging from the first bone, ranging from the first thoracic vertebra, which is actually the T1, to the last thoracic vertebra, which is the T12. So like I said, it's a total of 12 bones. So it is in the middle section of the spine. We find this thoracic region in the middle section of the spine. It is found in the middle section of the spine or of the vertebral column. Or the vertebral column. That is where we have these thoracic bones. So it starts at the base of the neck. Yes, when we talk about the positioning now, it starts at the base of the neck, and then it ends at the bottom of the ribs. and ends at the bottom of the ribs. I'll show us a picture that will depict all of this that I'm saying very shortly. Now, this particular set of bone, they have their own shape, they have their own structure, and all through all of the bones that are found on the vertebral column, there is a particular part called the central foramen where all the spine is being connected. It is especially rigid. This particular bone is very rigid. It is especially rigid, and this rigidity of it is the reason why it doesn't break easily. It is rigid and stable, making it the least common area of injury on the spine or along the spine, of injury along the spine. So this set of bones, they are very, very tough, they are very, very rigid, very, very stable. As such, they don't easily get damaged. The thoracic spine is surrounded by muscles. This part of the bone is surrounded, they are surrounded by muscles. They are surrounded by muscles, nerves. They are surrounded by muscles, nerves, tendons, and ligaments. Tendons and ligaments. So these are things that you find in that region, and they all have their functions because they help with movement and flexibility, all performing the function of movement. They help to bring about movement as well as flexibility. See some other few functions of the vertebral column, like it is responsible for protecting the spinal cord and branching into spinal nerves. Some functions here. They protect the spinal cord and branches into spinal nerves. And branches into spinal nerves. We also have another function for them by providing attachment for the ribs. They provide attachment for the ribs. They are also responsible for supporting the chest and the abdomen. They support the chest and the abdomen. So these are some of the things that we need to know about the thoracic vertebrae. So let me quickly show us what we are talking about actually. This is what the thoracic region or the thoracic vertebrae looks like. You can see the thoracic vertebrae here. It has the costal facets, it has the demifacets. So let me show us another example that we'll be able to see clearly. Now, this you can see what it is looking like here. This is what we are actually talking about. This is an example of the thoracic vertebrae, and it is found in the chest region on the backbone. It's found in the chest region on the backbone, and there are 12 in number. If you look at how they are being arranged on the backbone, you will see them looking like this. So if you count from here now, we are starting from this place here. This is the thoracic spine here. So count, let's see, this is a rib here. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So all of these ones are carry ribs. You can see the ribs like I'm pointing it here. You can see this is the first rib here and this is the last rib here. So all of these vertebrae that carry the ribs, they are thoracic vertebrae. So they are on the chest region of the vertebral column. That is what the thoracic vertebrae looks like. So this is what we are. If you look at this picture here now, we understand it better. The ones we have from this place here that have shown in brown color to this one here, they make up the thoracic vertebrae. So that is what we have to see about the thoracic vertebrae. Now let's move to the next specimen. So our next specimen now is specimen M. Specimen M, and that is the humerus bone. The humerus bone. Now, talking about this bone, we need to understand that it is a part of the human skeleton, or part of the mammalian skeleton. Let me put it that way. But I'll be secluding this discussion to the human skeleton. Now, the humerus is part of the appendicular skeleton. It is a part of the appendicular skeleton. The skeleton is generally divided into two. We have the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton comprises of the cranial box or the skull, as well as the vertebral column. Those are the parts that we have in the axial skeleton, while the appendicular skeleton consists of bones in other parts of the body that are not inclusive of the cranial box and the vertebral column. So parts like the arms, the limbs, all of those parts, they make up or they fall under the appendicular skeleton. So this particular bone we're talking about, the humerus bone, falls under that section, which is the appendicular skeleton. So the humerus is the largest bone of the upper arm. It is the largest bone. The largest bone of the upper arm, or extremity. Now, it articulates at the shoulder. It articulates at the shoulder. That is where we have all of these bones of the arm meeting, particularly the femur that we are particularly the humerus that we are talking about. It articulates at the shoulder in a joint referred to as, we have it called the glenoid joint. It is called the glenoid joint. That is what we have there for that particular part of the body. So it is called the glenoid. And at the elbow, it connects with the radius and the ulna. At the elbow, the humerus connects with two smaller bones. Smaller now compared to the size of the humerus. It's not that they're actually small, but compared to the size of the humerus, they are smaller. Smaller bones called ulna and radius. So those are the two smaller bones that we have there, ulna and radius. Now, the head of the humerus forms a ball and socket joint. The head of the humerus forms a ball and socket joint a ball and socket joint with the glenoid cavity. With the glenoid cavity, and this brings about movement in all directions. With the glenoid cavity on the scapula, now this brings about movement. It brings about movement in multiple planes. So it permits movement in all directions. That is what that particular statement is talking about. So we have the head of the humerus joining the shoulder or the shoulder joint, which is called the glenoid cavity, and then it articulates underneath at the elbow with two other bones called the ulna and radius. So that is what the humerus is talking about. So let us see example of the humerus. This is what the humerus is talking about. This is what a humerus looks like. So we can see this place here. That is where we have the head of the humerus. This place here is the head of the humerus. So this place attaches into the glenoid cavity. You can see it's written head of humerus. So it fits into the glenoid cavity, and because it is like a ball fitting into a socket, it permits movement in all planes. And underneath here we have this place here, which is found in the elbow. This place here connects with two other smaller bones compared to this humerus. Those bones, they are called the ulna and the radius. So that is what happens with the humerus bone. And so let me just show us other example. Now I'll encourage you to try as much as possible to check the link that is showing on your screen right now. That link has a video showing or talking about the skeleton, the mammalian skeleton. I have discussed at length all of the types of skeleton that we have, the axial skeleton as well as the appendicular skeleton, their types and all of their functions. So please do well to go through that video, and it will be very, very helpful. Now this is also what we talk about, the humerus. So we can see where the humerus is from. We can see it here. This is the humerus here that I'm using the pointer to touch. So at the head of the humerus here, is where we have the glenoid cavity. This joint here is called the glenoid cavity. So we have the head of the humerus attaching into the glenoid cavity, and here it is attached to two smaller bones. You can see the two bones, the ulna and the radius, attached or joined at this elbow. So that is basically what the humerus is talking about. So now we move to the next specimen. The next specimen, which happens to be specimen N. Specimen N, and that is the mango seed. So if we talk about the mango, we will understand that it has its own botanical name. The botanical name of mango is the Mangifera indica. We have it to be Mangifera indica. That is the botanical name of, the binomial or the scientific name of the mango. Now before we go further into it, let's quickly look at the classification of this particular organism. So we start with the kingdom. It is kingdom Plantae. And then the phylum. Now the phylum it belongs to the tracheophytes. It is a tracheophyte, so we call it the Tracheophyta. And then we have a class. The class is, we have it to be the Magnoliophyta. That is the class. And then the order is the Sapindales. We have the order to be the Sapindales. Then we go to talk about the family. The family there is the Anacardiaceae. The family there is the Anacardiaceae. Then we have the genus. The genus, we said it is the Mangifera. And then we have the species, which happens to be Indica. So that is the classification that we have for this particular organism. So let us move further now, talking about other things that we want to discuss about the mango seed. So mango is a dicot plant. It is a dicot or dicotyledonous plant, meaning each of its fruits has single seed. That is, its fruits has single seeds. Its fruit has single seeds with two cotyledons. Single seeds with two cotyledons. That is basically what that is talking about. It has two seed leaves. Now these cotyledons are fleshy and they store food. The cotyledons are actually fleshy and stores food. Yes, the cotyledons are fleshy and they help to store food. The embryo is covered by two layered seed coats. It has its embryo is covered by two layered coats. When we talk about the coats, the first coat there, we have the inner tegmen. And the second one that we have there, we have the outer testa. So those are the things that we have under the cotyledon or the covering of this particular seed. Now let's look at the nutritional value of this particular fruit. It is a large fruit produced from a large tree capable of reaching about 30 meters height or a height of 100 feet. Now when we look at the nutritional sources or nutritional benefits, it is very, very rich in sources like vitamin C. It is rich in vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin K. These are some of the materials that we have in it. It also has potassium. It has magnesium. We can also see folate, choline. We can also have beta carotene in this particular fruit. So it is very, very rich. Also, it has antioxidant properties. Which helps to relieve oxidative stress. These are some of the things that we have in that particular fruit. Now, it boosts the immune system. Yes, it also boosts the immune system. It promotes skin eye health. These, amongst others, are some of the things that we see in the mango seed or the mango fruit. Now, it is very, very high in carbohydrates content. It is rich in carbohydrate content, but it has low fats. It has low fats, sodium, and cholesterol. It doesn't have all of this, so it is not rich in fatty foods or sodium as well as cholesterol. So those are the things that we have to talk about talking about the mango seed. So we know that it is a dicot, so it produces two seed leaves, and since it is a dicot, the type of germination we'll be having on it, it is going to be an epigeo type of germination. Germination is going to be epigeo, that is above the soil surface. So looking at the specimen, this is what we have as example. If you are to show us some samples of the specimen, this is what we will be having. So this is an example of a mango seed, a dry mango seed. You can see how it looks. So, and this here, this particular picture here is showing the two-layered seed coat. You can see this two-layered seed coat where we have the inner the two seed coats. We're talking about the inner tegment as well as the outer testa. Now talking about the type of fruit that we have for the mango seed, let's quickly see this. Still talking about the specimen N, which is the mango seed. Specimen N, the mango seed. We need to see this as well. Talking about the placentation that we have in this particular plant as well as the type of fruit that it is. The placentation we have in it is the marginal placentation. The placentation is marginal. It has marginal placentation, and then when we look at the type of fruit that it is a drupe. Type of fruit, I said it is a drupe. So what do you mean by a drupe? A drupe is a simple succulent fruit. This is a simple succulent fruit from a monocarpous pistil. With superior ovary. A monocarpous pistil with superior ovary. It is usually one-seeded. It is usually one-seeded. So that is an example of what we have for the mango fruit. So the fruit has leathery epicarp, it has fleshy fruit, as well as the fibrous mesocarp. So those are parts of the drupe. So if we look at the how it is being classified, if you try to see the classification, we will see it's looking like this from the fruits to true fruits, and then we have it to become simple monocarpous or single monocarpous. From the single monocarpous, it becomes succulent pericarp. Succulent pericarp. And then it comes to the from the succulent pericarp, it becomes what we refer to as the drupe. So that is how it is being classified. So we understand the type of fruit that it is, as well as the placentation that is carried out in this fruit, in this particular fruit. So that is that about the specimen N, and then we move to the next specimen, talking about specimen P. Specimen P. Specimen P now is talking about specimen P is talking about the femur bone. The femur bone, that is what the specimen P is talking about. So what do you have to say about the femur bone? The femur bone is part of the appendicular skeleton, like we have the humerus bone talked about previously. So it is also part of the appendicular skeleton. So don't forget to check the video, like I said, the video that is showing above your screen right now. So it is part of the appendicular skeleton. This time around it is found on the lower limb. It is found on the lower or hind limb. Yes, it is found on the hind limb. That is actually the thigh bone. It is often called the thigh bone. Let me put that here. The thigh bone. Alright, so like I said, it is the longest, strongest bone in the body. It is the longest and strongest bone. The longest and strongest bone in the body. Now, it is a very, very critical part of the ability to stand and move. It is very responsible for the ability of an organism to stand and move. Without the function or the durability of the femur, it will not be possible for that organism to stand or to move. It supports lots of important muscles and tendons in the body. It supports numerous muscles, tendons, ligaments, and parts of the circulatory system. We can see how effective this particular part of the body is. So it is very, very important. Now, the head of it forms a ball and socket joint also, like that of the humerus. The head forms a ball and socket. It forms a ball and socket joint, similar to that found in the glenoid. So we have that here. Now, for this particular one, it fits into a part of the hip called the acetabulum. It fits into the joint. It fits into the joints of the hip or pelvic, called the acetabulum. Now, it also permits movement in multiple planes. At the lower end of this joint, this bone, at the lower end of the joint, of the joint, the femur is attached is attached to the knee flat bone, called the patella, as well as two bones and two other bones called the tibia and the fibula. So those other bones are the bones of the lower part of the knee. So we need to understand all of this. In this particular bone called the bone, the femur, we have the production of the bone marrow. Yeah, that is the site of production of bone marrow. It is in the longest bone of the body that we have the production of the bone marrow. So let me just put that here. It is responsible for the production of bone marrow. So we need to know that as its function. So let us see what the femur looks like. This is what the femur looks like. We can see the femur here. So example of what we are looking at is what we refer to as the femur. So we can see the head of it here, which attaches into the acetabulum. It is a ball and socket, so it attaches into the acetabulum, and then we have other parts of the of this particular bone. Apart from this part here, you can see this red part here is showing the marrow. That is where the marrow is being produced, and underneath here it is attached to some other types of bones underneath here. That is where it is joint in this part here called the knee. That is where we have the articular cartilage joining all of the bones in that part, where we have the patella, then the fibia, then the tibia and the fibula. All of those bones meet at the knee. So that is that about the femur. We can see the bone here also. So it is joined here by the tibula and the fibula underneath at the joint here. In front of it is where we have a small flat disc called the patella. That is the kneecap. And then we have the bone entering into the hip or the pelvic joint here, which is called the acetabulum, with this head here. You can see the head is round, so it fits directly into the acetabulum. So that is that about the femur bone. We can see the head of the femur now, so it fits into the acetabulum perfectly. And then underneath here is where we have the blade, we have the patella facing this place here, and then the two bones are attached as well to this part here. So that is that about the specimen P. So we move further to talk about specimen Q. Specimen Q now, talking about the lumbar vertebrae. Specimen Q, that's the lumbar vertebra. The lumbar vertebra. Now, when we look at the lumbar vertebrae, it is part of the vertebral column, but it is not appendicular skeleton. It is part of the axial skeleton. It is part of the axial skeleton. So let me put that here. It is part of the axial skeleton. Like we have talked about the thoracic skeleton or the thoracic vertebra, it is part of the axial skeleton. The lumbar vertebra is also part of the axial skeleton. Now, it is found at the lower back. The lumbar vertebra is found at the lower back. It is found at the lower back of the back, or the lower region. It is found at the lower region of the backbone, and it consists of 5 bones. Lower back consisting of successive 5 bones 5 bones. We have the L1 to L5. Those are the set of bones that we have on the lumbar vertebrae. Other structures in or around the lumbar spine are the intervertebral discs, the spinal cord, as well as the nerves. Other structures around the lumbar spine include, we have the intervertebral discs, include the intervertebral discs, we also have the spinal cord, as well as the nerves. So it is very important that you know all of this. Now, it is used as or a form of attachment point for stability. It is used as attachment point for stability. The lumbar vertebrae is used as an attachment point for stability and protection. These are part of the functions of the bone, the lumbar vertebrae and the spinal cord. Now, if you look at it, it is found in the third region of the vertebral column, because we have the first region to be the thoracic, the cervical. The first region is the cervical, followed by the thoracic, and then we have the lumbar coming in the third position. So it is in the third position. It is found in the third position. In the third position or region of the vertebral column. And it is found between, like I said earlier on, it is found between the thoracic vertebra, and, let me be specific, between the thoracic, which is going to be the T12, and the sacral, which is going to be the S1, S1 vertebrae. That is where we find the lumbar vertebra. So the 5 set of lumbar vertebrae that we have, the L1, L2, they come in after the T12. After the T12, you have the L1, L2, L3, L4, L5 before you get to the S1, which is the sacral vertebra. So that is where you find it, and then the sacral vertebra leads into the pelvic region. So that is basically what we want to look at on the vertebra of the lumbar vertebrae. So let us see some pictures or some figures to actually help drive our points home. That's the lumbar vertebrae. So this place here is called the vertebral foramen. It is uniform for all the vertebral bones. So it is through this part here, the vertebral foramen, that we have what we refer to as the spinal cord, passing through, connecting all of the bones together. And here is where we have the vertebral disc, where we now have another bone sitting directly on it. So it is because of the vertebral disc that is found in this area or this region here. Talking about this region here, it is because of the vertebral disc that is found in that environment that prevents these bones from actually colliding with one another, and so it prevents wear and tear. So this is the L2 vertebra, the superior view of the L2 vertebrae. So if we look at this particular picture here, we will get to understand what you're talking about very well. Now, looking at this now, we have all of these bones from this place here, 1 2 3 4 5 to this place here, to the T12. So we have T1 to T12, and then we have the L1, L2, L3, L4, L5 before we now have the sacral bone. So these ones here that are shown or depicted in purple, they form the lumbar vertebrae, and this is how the picture looks. So when you are told to draw the lumbar vertebrae, we know what to draw. This is the body, and then we have the pedicle, and then this is the spinal canal, or the vertebral foramen. So that is where the spinal cord passes through, connecting all of the bones together. So basically that is what we want to talk about, looking at the lumbar vertebrae. So we can see where it is found here now, in the in the upper abdomen. That is where we have the lumbar vertebrae, and then in the lower abdomen is where we now have the sacral bone. So that is basically what the lumbar vertebrae is talking about. And then we move to the next specimen, which is going to be the last specimen that we have, talking about specimen R. Specimen R. Specimen R, and that is the orange seeds. Orange seeds. So when we talk about the orange seed, I believe we know that it is a fruit. So we'll quickly look at that shortly. Now, this particular fruit has its own scientific name. Let me quickly put that here. Its own scientific name, we have it to be the Citrus sinensis. Citrus sinensis. That is its scientific name. So let's quickly look at the binomial classification, or the botanical name. For the kingdom, we have it to be Plantae. The phylum, we have it to be the dicot. Sorry, the phylum is the Magnoliphyota. Is a Magnoliopter. So it's a magnoliphyte, and so we call it the Magnoliphyta. And so we have, after that, we have the class. The class is it's a dicot, so we call it a dicotyledonous plant. A dicotyledon. And then order. For the order, we have it to be the Sapindalis. The Sapindalis. And then the family. The family, it belongs to the Rutaceae. The Rutaceae. And then the genus is where we now have the citrus. And then species, we have it to be the sinensis. So these are the taxonomical classification of the orange fruit. So we move further, looking at what we want to look at, or some of the characteristics of this particular fruit. Now, when we look at the fruit, let me quickly put that here. Okay, it has the kind of placentation that we refer to as axial placentation. Placentation in the orange seed is axial. The placentation is axial, and it has a spherical peel. So when we look at the orange fruit itself, it has a spherical outer peel, or called the epicap, with underlining fibrous layer. Let me just put them there. Spherical outer peel, called the epicap, with underlining fibrous layer, called the mesocarp. So these are very important parts of the orange fruit, and then it has the juicy part called the endocarp. And the juicy parts, called the endocarp. So these are very important parts of the orange fruit. So if you look at the classification now, when we look at the fruit, it is a fruit. And what kind of fruit is it? It is a true fruit because it possesses ovary. It is from the ovary. So we see it as a true fruit because it is from ovary. And then it is simple or monocarpous. That is, it produces monocarpous flower, and then from there we have it to be succulent. It is succulent. And then it is also seen as an hesperidium. We have it as an hesperidium. And so those are the things that we need to look at talking about the fruit of the orange. Now the seed is actually what we are looking at. So with the seed, a particular plant can be brought into, or orange plant can be brought into being. So that is what this particular one here is talking about. So it is a dicot as well, because when it germinates, it splits and brings out two cotyledons. So we have that as the materials that we need to see talking about the citrus or the orange seed. So let us see some pictures regarding that. So these are what we refer to as orange seeds. These are orange seeds. You can see them, orange seeds, and they are gotten from the orange fruit. You can see them in here. That is what we have as the orange seed. You can see them. They have axial placentation. That is what they have there. So that is that about that. Let's see other example. We can see this part as well. So we need to understand that. So this brings us to the end of talking about this specimen for the biology practical. I will plead with us to try as much as possible to familiarize yourselves with all of the specimens, understand everything that has been discussed for each of these particular specimen. I wish you success in your exams, and please don't forget to subscribe if you are yet to do so. Share this content with your friends, like our content, and we want to hear from you, so please do not hesitate to give us or to send out your questions across to us. Perhaps you have any. Success in your exam. Bye for now.